Hi everyone, welcome to the booth here at Createx Colors. I'm Chris Arpin, and today we're going to talk about our Candy2o paint system. More specifically, how to mix and reduce our Candy2o system. So now, I call it a system, and it is exactly that, right? It's a two-part system. So you have our candy, that's the color, the dye, and then we have the medium, like the vehicle in terms of how to apply that particular candy on the surface that you're spraying. So that particular vehicle, or that medium, is our 4050, our UVLS Gloss 4050. It's been about 2 years now since this has been out, and this has basically been our go-to and what we recommend over everything when spraying our Candy2o. Just the way it sprays, atomizes, the way it holds the color together, everything is exceeded in terms of what our expectations were for this product in terms of use with our Candy2o paint system. So that is what we recommend. These are the two components when spraying candy. That applies to spray gun and airbrush. So we'll start with spray gun first, 6:1 in terms of ratio, right? So that means 6 parts 40-50 to 1 part candy. And what that's doing is it's kind of extending the concentration. These are dyes. These are concentrated, right? So they're very rich. 6:1 is kind of just enough to allow you to slowly and gradually build up color nice and uniform, and if you're familiar with spraying candies, they are a little more difficult to use in terms of really exacting with your overlap, your pass, your distance off the panel. So 6:1 kind of extends that color, makes it a little easier to spray, and you're going to typically build up your color between like 3 to 5 coats in terms of that color saturation. So it makes the candies a little bit more forgiving, and it really holds together well. So now if you're spraying large spray gun, and tip size, we're talking a 1.2 to a 1.3 is kind of where you want to be. So mini gun to a full size, 1.3 is kind of the max. You should not need to reduce. In the event that you do, certain colors kind of react a little bit differently in terms of how they thin out the 40-50, the viscosity of the 40-50, maybe 5%. 5% 40-11. The 40-11 is our go-to. That's what we recommend across the board for everything, for all you're reducing. You might not necessarily have to hit 10%. If you go a little bit higher in the ratio, again, depending on what it is you're spraying or the application, there are a few colors in the line that require a little bit more of that extending the color, meaning a little less candy, a little more 40-50. Some of those colors are emerald green, our brandywine, anything that's a little bit darker, richer, really concentrated, really rich colors could use a little more extension, and I mean extension and making a little more 40-50 versus the candy. So you might go, instead of 6:1, you might go 8:1, you might go 10:1, you can go 12:1. Just keep in mind, the more 40-50 that you add, you're going to kind of offset the effect of that candy in terms of the ability to thin down to get a desirable spray viscosity. So you might have to up your 40-11. So you might have to go 10% up at that point. But again, it's just kind of depending on the ratios. You can go a little more concentrated. You can go 4:1. That's kind of where I would kind of cut the limit in terms of that reduction. 4:1 is kind of the lowest in terms of the least amount of 40-50 versus candy. But 6:1 is really good and consistent across the board. So that covers spray gun. Moving on to airbrush. That's kind of a little more freestyle in terms of what the users, they're project specific in terms of how you're spraying, how you're mixing. It's a little more free. 1:1 is kind of our go-to recommended mixture. So I don't want to exceed 1:1. So it's 1 part candy, 1 part 40-50. At that ratio, it's going to be about the same viscosity, right? You're going to knock down the thickness of that 40-50 because you have a little bit more candy. So the candy kind of acts as that reducer. If you go a little bit less candy, a little more 40-50, you're going to have to reduce. But again, it's all dependent upon air pressure, what it is you're spraying, the size of your project, and the tip size. Now the nice thing is that this system will work through basically any tip size airbrush, all the way down from the equivalent of a custom micron all the way up to a 0.5. So really it's going to flow and spray extremely well, atomize extremely well through any size, any full range of airbrush. But again, you can make those adjustments with our 40-11. So that's kind of the rule of thumb, is kind of do a little spray, test, see what the flow is, see how you like it. You can always add a little bit more reducer and kind of adjust it from there. So when we do mix, right, we're going to go ahead and I'll show you guys exactly what it is I'm talking about. You want to let this sit for about 10 minutes after you actually physically mix it together. So mix it really well for about 2 minutes, stir in the candy into that 40-50, and then let it sit Give it about 10 minutes acclimation time. And what that's doing is it's just allowing that mixture to kind of marry together, become nice and even throughout the whole mixing cup. And it's just going to allow you a better spray when you're actually going to apply the 40-50. So give me 1 second, and we'll get some stuff together, and we'll mix a little bit of candy. All right, guys, welcome back. We are ready to go ahead and mix. In front of me, I have a pretty good sized mixing cup. I think it's just going to show you guys a little better in terms of illustrating what it is we're doing. But you guys are familiar. There's a bunch of different sizes, anything from pints all the way up to huge mixing cups. And the thing that's great about these is there are mixing ratios already all over these cups. So we're going to go with 6-to-1. And it just so happens that that's on this cup. It's super easy to use. So we'll start with the 40-50. Every time when I mix candy, I always start obviously with that particular ratio, whatever it's going to be, whether it's 8-to-1, 6-to-1, 4-to-1, the 40-50 is first. So mix it up really well. So I'm going to pour right to I'll go to 4, the 4 mark on that, 6. I'm going to go ahead and add 1 part candy. So now I have a 6-to-1 mix. You can see that did not really move a lot, and that's it. It's because that is it's not a lot of candy versus the 40-50. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this up. Now, one of the things that you're going to want to do is, I don't know if you can see it on camera here, you can see quite a bit of that clear kind of milkiness in the bottom of this cup from what was left over my 40-50. It is key that you make sure that all of this is totally nice and evenly mixed. Right? So he said mix it for about 2 minutes to make sure it's totally mixed, and then we're going to let this sit for 10 minutes before we go to spray. So I'm just going around the cup making sure there are no white streaks. I see a little bit in the front there. Move it around. You can see the back side here. What I already was looking at, I could see better. But that's it. You really want to take your time and make sure that this is totally mixed. So give it a good stir. And typically what I would do is, again, I would let this sit for about 10 minutes before I put it in my spray gun. Now, this is for, again, remember, the 6-to-1 ratio spray gun. This is the viscosity that we want. It's a little bit thicker, I guess you could say a little bit thicker than the viscosity of milk, right? It's flowing off the stick, it's moving off the stick, it's not hanging and it's not dripping just like water. If it was really thin, you'd kind of have that like staccato kind of a drip. That's the last thing you want because you're going to have trouble spraying that. So that's key in terms of the viscosity. And again, this 6-to-1 ratio is going to kind of be, all the paints are going to look like that. And that's a perfect flow. That's exactly what you want right off the stick. Again, if this was airbrush, you'd want to adjust it. But again, you can do it according to what it is, what the spray equipment that you're using. You can do it according to what it is that you're spraying, or kind of just the look we're after. Again, the airbrush is a little more kind of interpretive in terms of how you're doing it. But again, just a test panel. It's going to tell you right away. You know, spray a little spot, you're going to see how it's atomizing, how it's flowing through your brush. The last thing is, I went ahead and mixed this right before I were to put it in a paint cup or a PPS cup, whatever it is that you're using. You want to strain this. This is a 125 micron strainer. So really what I could have done is before I poured my candy in, I could have poured my candy through the strainer first before I mixed it in here. But we always recommend, this is the finest mesh that you can get in terms of a mesh for water-based paint, 125 microns, really, really small. It's just good practice in the event that you get a little bit of candy built up in the lid or the cap or stuff around the top. The last thing you want to do is have any of these little chunks fall into your paint, and you're going to see it. When you spray this, if you have any kind of contamination in there, you're going to see it, and you're not going to make that go away when you're spraying. So the last thing you want to do, this is kind of cheap insurance in terms of ensuring that your candy's nice and clean before you start to spray. So 125 microns. So I think for Createx Colors and Candy2o paint system, I think that wraps it up for this one. So thanks for checking us out. We'll see you guys next time.